Hey, so happy new year, and wow, welcome to 2023 and our first council meeting, and I think we'll have Judy call us in.
For something new.
Yes. I'm here.
Stokes.
I am here.
McQueen. Here. Brown. Yep. DeVore Leonard will not be with us this evening at the council table. He will attempt to zoom in as it is possible for him to do. Also present is Solicitor Amy Blankenship, Finance Director Amy Kemper, Village Manager Josue Samaran, and Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swear.
All right, sweet. Welcome back, everyone. I have no doubt that 2023 is going to be a auspicious year. And yeah, with that, I think, Josue, you've got some announcements.
Yes, I am looking forward to 2023.
Yes.
2022 is rough. 2023
we're done with 2022.
Yes, it's going to be a great year. And we have so much to be grateful for in 2022. I want to start off with a couple thank yous. As you know, starting December 22nd, we had some significant weather events. We experienced weather as low as minus 11 degrees with the wind chills. It got to minus 30. Lights were kept on the whole time. No water main breaks. We did well. Then the following day, we had a volatile situation that was resolved peacefully, and it wouldn't have been possible without the great leadership that we have here in our organization, starting with Chief Paige Burge and the team. We were able to resolve a serious issue peacefully, and we couldn't have done it without her leadership. And with the support of our law enforcement partners, that being Greene County Sheriff's Office, the SWAT team, Xenia Fire, Xenia Police Department. We had a lot of help from surrounding jurisdictions, and their collaboration was just outstanding. And that, I give that credit to Chief Birch to be able to have those resources at our disposal and have them support our work, and our officers. So many of our officers were.
Well, and I think since you brought this up, I mean, you shared with me that you felt that our chief was in control of the situation.
Yes.
From the entirety, so, yeah, so.
I think that speaks volumes to the credibility she has in the surrounding area and her ability to collaborate with these other law enforcement agencies. So that went well. So I also want to thank the neighbors and friends who helped on the Christmas Eve. I think that their support was instrumental in getting to a peaceful resolution. On announcements, we got a couple housekeeping items. Starting January 9th through the 13th, we will have the holiday tree pickup. So it's our custom, put your Christmas trees, your holiday trees out on the curb, and our teams will pick those up. So that's starting January 9th. A couple other announcements. We have a town hall scheduled for July 11th. That's Wednesday, July 11th at 7 p.m. Sorry, January 11th at 7 p.m. on our utility rate structure and proposed utility rate increases. So we want to connect with our residents on the challenges we're experiencing and what we're proposing.
And reciprocal tax.
And the reciprocal tax. So that will be January 11th. There are two options. It will be a virtual option so folks can zoom in. We'll also make this room available for anyone who wants to come in person.
Great.
And you got an announcement, right?
Yeah, I do. So yeah, again, I want to say I thought New Year's Eve was great. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I appreciate how we all come together to facilitate that. And yeah, it felt a little bit more local this year, not so crowded. So I don't know. I mean, for me anyway. So it was really nice.
A lot of people there.
There were a lot of, yeah, but I don't know. It just felt like more homey to me. So yeah. And then I did want to recognize that it was great that we could support Kwanzaa again this year. And we had supported some speakers for that, and I know that was great. And then I think Martin Luther King Jr. Day, we've got a flyer that we're going to share. And I think everyone knows in the village how important a week from next Monday is going to be for our village. So one thing I did notice is things are being moved around. So the sharing at Coretta Scott King Center is happening in the afternoon instead of the morning. So I guess that means people can sleep in a little bit. But yeah, so we'll be meeting downtown at 9:45 as the flyer highlights, and doing our march and everything else. And then, yeah, there'll be some things at the Coretta Scott King Center on the back end of the celebration, which I think is a great idea. Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, so then I think we are on the consent agenda, and we've got a myriad of minutes to go through. So, excuse me. Let's start with the minutes of December 1st, 2022. And can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And then we've got our minutes from December 19th, 2022. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes of December 7th, 2022. That was the joint session.
Move.
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And then our December credit card statement, which we got an update where we could actually, see how the amounts matched. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Great. Okay. Review of the agenda. I know, Carmen, you wanted to add something?
Under new business, right?
Yep.
So under new business, nominating Michael Caselli and Ina Neron and Amy Wamsley
Great.
for PACC.
Yes. Some nice talent there.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Cool. Okay. Anything else that we need to add, subtract, or modify on the agenda?
Judy, I don't know if Gavin is on, but did you say we were maybe going to do something different with?
He will try to, he'll try to come on for the part where you talk about the proposal for Council Committee on Public Safety, but he is planning to bump it forward to the next meeting for further discussion, whether he's here or not here, so just a heads up on that.
So we might not talk about that
You are,
under new business.
if you do talk about it, it will be quite brief, and he'll just sort of set you up for the next meeting.
Okay. Cool. All right. So then let's go ahead and move into petitions and communications. I think you got short shifted today, huh?
Yeah, Phil. So I'm going to talk 5 minutes about this one item that we received. It's a very helpful calendar that Judy forwarded, and I appreciate it. I do plan on putting all of those dates in my calendar, but it was a good reminder that our next meeting is the 17th,
Yes.
and not the 16th.
Right.
Right. So it was good to joggle the memory. But once again, we have received and filed that communication, and thank you once again, Judy.
All right.
Okay.
So I think we're going to move into legislation then. And actually, we don't have any second or emergency reads tonight, as far as I understand. So we're going to go into 2023-01. And Judy, we can read that in by title only because it's a first reading.
All right, this is repealing and replacing Appendix A to Section 1272.04 of the Yellow Springs zoning code establishing permit fees.
Okay. So it looks like Denise is ready to talk about this.
Sure. So it was probably a couple years ago when we initially started looking at the zoning fees, realizing that we were really low in comparison to other communities. Over that time, we gathered some information from various municipalities. And then this year, when we decided, yes, we're going to move forward with looking at updating this, we rechecked to make sure that other communities hadn't further updated theirs, and then plugged any new information in. And the way we did the spreadsheet was to average it out. So knowing that Yellow Springs is really low, some communities are really high, we wanted to try to come up with some sort of average. So we looked at Bellbrook, Kettering, City of Oakwood, a few townships, Bath Township, Xenia Township, and Miami Township here, our Miami Township, and also Fairborn. So when we came up with those averages, which we provided a spreadsheet for, we then decided to dive a little bit deeper into that and look at, not only look at, but break down some of our zoning applications by the types that they are. For example, fence doesn't take that long for us to process as compared to like a garage structure where we have to look at height and the roof eaves and a lot of other things. And so we kept that at a lower level. We bumped up the accessory structures, garages a little bit higher. And then for things like conditional uses, we know we never can cover, we never be able to get from our fees to be able to cover staff salaries and things like that, but we at least wanted to try to cover some of those ancillary expenses that we have, such as, you know, our public notification, and then we have to put signs up and that kind of thing. So we feel pretty confident that this is a good, it's sort of an in the middle. We're not gouging people and we're not lowballing. So we felt that this would be good. And the last time the entire thing was overhauled was in 2013. I think it was in September of 2013, so it's been over 9 years. We've had a few things tweaked within it since then, within the past 5 years. We've individually took out a few and changed some things around, but we did a complete overhaul this time, and this is what we're presenting.
So Denise, one of the things I guess I shared today was learning that Kettering had like a $350 fee for conditional. And I just wondered what you thought about that. So, I mean, and I will admit, I just, you know, kind of did a little looking just this afternoon, so.
Well, you know, Josue and I were talking about that this afternoon too, about the fact that, you know, we're trying to find that balance between, you know, we're a community, we're small, we don't have a lot of incentives to offer new businesses coming in. Actually, we really don't have anything much at all. So, I mean, this is one way to at least make it a little bit more appealing, is to not have it to be such a higher amount as you might be able to get from a place like City of Kettering.
Okay.
So
it's a good answer.
Yeah,
Marianne?
I had talked to Denise just before the meeting about the transient guest lodging permit. And could you explain more about what you explained to me about the different ways that people who have transient guest lodging pay into the village? And the reason why I'm asking is because this would potentially be an opportunity to funnel some of that fee money into the housing fund. I'm not suggesting now that we do it, but I'm glad to hear that it's more than just the $25. Could you
right, oh, yeah. So when all transient guest lodgings are conditional. So there's that $100 conditional use application fee as it stands right now. That would increase to $150. Then if they are approved, then the actual permit is $25 currently. What happens then is after that process is gone through, I collect a $100 registration fee. That's an annual ongoing fee. That fee, then at that point, I turn that over. That now becomes under the finance department. So then they are responsible for tracking the ongoing annual registration fees as well as collecting the tax, which they do biannually. We do have a number, not a large number, but we do have less than, I don't want to say off the top of my head, maybe 8 to 10 that are still under the old, before we restricted and put basically not allowing people that are non-operator occupied to have an Airbnb type of situation. Those then pay $500 registration and a $1,500 annual affordable housing mitigation fee. But, once those are sold, well, they can't renew those. A new owner cannot renew it unless they live on the property. And then it's subject to the 500 feet from one to the other. So it's kind of complicated, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Kevin?
Yes, thank you, Brian. Denise, I appreciate your going through the analysis that you did of charges in the region, if you will. Did you do the same analysis for the fines for non-compliance?
I didn't see fines. We just have always had our own. I really didn't see fines in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've just always paid, if it's $100, then it's $150 if you're
Right.
late.
Right. Okay. That's just wondering if you did that same. And I it's not important, but when I did first read that cost of permit plus 50%, I was like, 50% of, okay, I guess the.
Yeah, the 50% of the cost of the permit, yes.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did, just was wondering if you, how you thought we might compare with others. And if we find that we're off, we can adjust.
We can always, yes, we can. I mean, in some cases, we're really going from something very low. We are, on a few of those, we are going pretty high from what we were before, but I think it's justified.
Yeah,
And it's justified by the amount of effort that we have to put into it.
right, agreed. Great, thank you.
Carmen, were you gonna?
Yeah, so roughly, this is just, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I should probably already know this, but roughly how many transient guest lodging kind of Airbnb situations do we have in town?
Riley should have the most up-to-date information because I couldn't answer that for him while I was on vacation. So Chelsea, I know before I left, it's around 40 something. 42, okay, 42.
There's probably a few more that we could still dig up, but yeah.
But
Okay.
that's kind of something that is always changing, and we might want to check in again later to see if we want to, unrestrict some of that.
And we have some kind of process, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where we kind of check in, like,
Yeah.
all right. So, okay, so I'm like, kind of, the other thing I emailed about is I think we should be pegged to Oakwood. And so I saw $35, $40 when I looked at Oakwood, Centerville, and others. So I guess I'm just wondering, particularly with the first section, zoning permits, why not increase those amounts to $40?
Well, it's increased more than that. If you look at that average is not what we ended up with. That's the average that we came when we accumulated all of it together, but then we dug a little bit deeper and decided to really look at it based on what the different projects were. So for example, I think you were just showing something for $40 that was a deck, I think. Is that what it was under Oakwood?
Maybe, yeah.
A deck for ours, we're proposing $50.
Okay.
So I think we've done our due diligence. Let's just,
Denise, do you have a suggestion on how often this should be updated, or have you thought about that?
well, definitely more than every 10 years, but maybe every 5. Yeah.
Okay, and just remind me again, like, what happens with the conditional use application? So we put out one of those signs, right?
We put out a sign. We send a letter to the adjacent and abutting neighbors, and we put an ad in the paper. But in trying to say, we don't do individual ads for each hearing. So if there's 3 hearings and we're collecting $300, we're still only doing 1 ad.
Okay. I'm good. Anything else?
I'm good.
All right.
I have a response, Brian, to the question Marianne raised. Marianne, you asked how often we should do this. One of the things that we have envisioned is getting to a point where we could have one sheet or a master rate sheet that itemizes all the fees. the village and that are covered in different ordinances. That way, when we need to update a fee amount, whether it's a planning and zoning or a permit fee, that council will be looking at one sheet, and it'll make it easier from legislative perspective to update the fees as we need it, so that we don't have to repeal and replace an ordinance every time we need to make a change. So we envision a world where there's an easier process to update fees.
Sounds good.
And will this be on our website?
Yes.
It'll be in the zoning code, which you can access on the website.
Okay, because I know when I've looked for some of them, it was hard to find, so, all right, good. Okay. So this is a first reading. I don't think we need to take a vote. Seems like we're pretty much okay with it. So thanks, Denise. All right. Okay, so we're gonna move into Resolution 2023-01, and we can read that in by title only as well.
All right, this is authorizing the sale during calendar year 2023 of municipally owned personal property which is not needed for public use or which is obsolete or unfit for the use for which it was acquired by internet auction pursuant to the Ohio Revised Code Sections 721.15D.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Well, that's quite a title. Okay, Josue?
Thank you, Brian. This is a housekeeping item. As you know, we've got equipment that becomes obsolete, outdated, and we try to recover some value out of it by selling it in GovDeals auction site. So this allows us to sell equipment that is surplus and no longer needed.
Okay. Questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, so then we are gonna move into Resolution 2022-02.
This is adjusting village employee wage scales.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So I know we've talked about this for a while. I really appreciated the table that was shared about just kind of comparing where we've been in terms of, you know, what the consumer price index has been. So, Josue?
Thank you, Brian. We're certainly following the ordinance on this that says, look at the CPI and what our surrounding jurisdictions are doing and what can we afford to do. We talked about a cost of living adjustment for employees, 4%. We're in the strangest time in labor market and with a hyperinflation. So I think 4% is what we budgeted. We would like to do more, but we've got some financial constraints. In terms of overall inflation, as you can see from one of the tables, we've tried to keep up with inflation. We're not there yet, and part of that is 2 years of high inflation. But I feel proud of the work that we've been able to do over the years to try to keep up with inflation and pay our employees fair wages. And Amy has joined us if there's any questions for finance.
Well, and not that it makes a ton of difference, but I think seems like our track record in the past was pretty good from the table that I looked at. And so, yeah, we're on hard times, but yeah, I'm happy with that, what we're addressing.
What do you mean?
Marianne?
What do you mean our track record?
If you look at the past, we actually gave increases that were higher than the increase in consumer price index for several years. So, which was actually, we've always tracked with like other municipalities in the region, but
I put it up there if you want to.
but if you look at it, we in the past were above, those increases were above the
CPI.
Yeah.
Right, and many of these were intentional. There were times where the village could afford to do more than the CPI in an effort to stay on track with inflation.
Right. So I was just impressed that we, had done pretty well in the past. So, and we'll continue to work on this. So, okay. Any other questions, comments?
No, just thanks for the detailed information, which would have assuaged any questions I had, I thought. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we're going to go into Resolution 2023-03. Title only is great.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to enter into an amendment to a leased agreement with Stony Creek Garden Center for village-owned property located at 4550 US 68 North.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Brian. As you know, we have a property out on 68 that is currently under lease to Stony Creek Garden Center. It's been a longstanding relationship. Our last lease extension was covering the period of 2020 to 2022. This is a new lease extension. We're proposing a 5-year lease extension with a 5% rate adjustment year to year. We think that the rate adjustment is reasonable. We anticipate a property tax increase on the land for various reasons, the valuation and a new tax levy that property is subject to.
And yeah, just so folks know that, there was an updated document that had the number. I think we had grabbed the draft that had the XXX amount
right.
before we, negotiated it last time. Yeah, I want to say, I think Stony Creek is an amazing business, and, they came to us, I guess, has it been 3 years ago?
Oh, it's been longer than that.
Yeah, I know, but, I think when they came, and said, how they really wanted to improve the property and what they've done, and, it's really nice to have a tenant that, wants to continue to improve the land, so,
Right.
yeah. So any questions?
Yep, all seems pretty straightforward.
Okay. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so I did want to mention on that last resolution, I also noticed that in our survey of the region that we were in the top 4 of, thinking about our cost of living adjustment. And I think that's something to be proud of as a community. So anyway.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes, all right. Resolution 2023-04, title only is good.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to enter into a license agreement with Hudson Sculpture Limited.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, this is a fun story.
It is. Did you read about it in the paper?
I didn't.
So John Hudson received an award to provide a sculpture for a local university, chemistry department. And 2 big cranes are coming down the road. If I miss anything, Riley, let me know, because you guys cover the story. So the delivery guy said that they can somehow squeeze it into their shop, and when they get to the site, they can't. And they need a place to put this massive 22-ton rock. And so John is trying to figure it out. We get looped into the conversation. We said, yeah, we've got some space out of the CB, and put it out there. We won't take responsibility if anybody tags it or do anything. So we allowed John Hudson to put the massive rock out there, the boulder, so that he could make his project. So he'll cut it up. I don't know how, but he'll cut it up, and he'll pay us a monthly rental fee for having the big rock out at the CBE. So in speaking with Amy Blankenship, we needed to have some sort of lease arrangement on this deal. So there's a license agreement that authorizes John Hudson to have the boulder at the CBE property and be able to work on it while he's there. And we take no responsibility for the security of it. I don't think it's going anywhere because it requires multiple cranes to move. I don't think anybody's going to roll it. So,
Yeah.
in terms of timeline, it's going to be, he expects that it be done, completed within 6 months. So this will be a month-to-month lease until he's able to get the project done or moved.
Yep.
Yeah, and it really does kind of highlight, if you've never, walked or biked by John's place. I mean, it's amazing just to see the sculptures, and, he gets to go to China like every other year to like create these things. And so it'd be great if we documented. So Yeah, Mary Ann?
Well, I saw that rock,
Yeah.
which I thought, oh, Cresco. And then someone said, oh, well, it must be stone, I think it's a rock.
Oh.
Yeah,
A little levity
Well,
goes
now
a
I
long
found
way.
out.
Yep. All right.
yeah.
All right. So any questions?
Was that a nod to Lacey about the sculpture project being?
See, there you go. I can imagine like some, be fun to do that.
Yeah.
Speed time, whatever, so, but I mean, because I just imagine him in China when he's done this, and the fact that like it's going to happen here is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
So,
It's cool.
yeah.
Yeah, we could all see it come to its final product,
Yeah.
right out there. It's neat. It's neat.
Cool.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So, citizen concerns. This is the time on the agenda for anything that's not an agenda item. I guess unless Riley has something. Oh, okay. Yeah, good. Come on up. Sure.
Riley Dixon, Yellow Springs News. You said the Stony Creek resolution changed a little bit. What were they paying and what are they paying now? Because I have the document with the X's.
Yes, the rate that we're proposing is $911.63. So that number replaced the excess on the resolution. What their current rate is, or what they're paying before this resolution, is $868.22.
Cool, thank you. My next question is, it seems like if there were to be a thread going through all of the ordinances and resolutions tonight, it seems the village is trying to actively bring in extra revenue. And I was just curious to know if it was purely coincidental, if they all kind of showed up at the same time, or if there had been a discussion that led to a concerted effort to bring in more revenue in whatever way the village could. So.
On the planning and zoning fees, yes, we've been evaluating all our service charges for all the things that we've done. So that's in line with the continued work that we're doing to make sure that we're charging the appropriate fees and we're staying within competitive marketplace. So you heard about the research that Denise did. We did that for our building department fees. We've done that for other fees. So the planning and zoning fees, those are just a matter of timing when we can get it in. The leases, we couldn't have scheduled John Hudson's lease. It's just something that opportunity.
Wound up with the rock.
Right, right. And the Stony Creek is certainly that this is the timing of when the renewals are.
Okay.
But they certainly help our revenue streams, using the assets that we own to generate revenue that goes into the general fund.
Okay.
But I would say in terms of that trend, making right-sizing our zoning fees is part of, what we're going to talk about next with the reciprocal tax adjustment and utility rates and all that. So while not tonight, I mean, that is definitely a theme of 2023. So.
Cool. Good stuff.
And of course, the resolution to direct Hostway or allow Hostway to sell equipment, that's an annual thing that just happens this time of year.
Yeah.
Every year.
Cool. Okay. No special reports. So managers report.
All right, thank you, Brian. All right, so thank you for the recognition on New Year's Eve. We had a great event, a good turnout. I actually, my kids and I stood sort of back a little bit because there's a good crowd. So really good event. Overall, we're having good success closing out the year. Things that you see in our report. We're closing out the year, opening the new year. Amy, who's gone offline now, has been a godsend in helping us make those transitions. So we want to recognize the team for that. Mary Ann, I updated, per your request, the water loss table.
Oh, yes.
So there's a new column there, so you'll be able to see that. You can see the substantial difference in how much water that we save, particularly on volume, on that table. So that's been included in that report.
But Josue, I have another water question.
Okay.
I noticed that the percentage of water loss is not the same every month. What would cause that?
There's some some things that are cost on our side when we flush the hydrants and when we have the fire station utilize water from the various points. So those two things. Well, and then we also do exercising valves. Those are things that would fluctuate the numbers. And there's others, we have main breaks that happen at some predictability. You know, we were prepared to deal with water main breaks during this really cold weather that we had, but we didn't have any. But water main breaks would affect that. We've had requests for demolition projects to tap into water. So it'll be a variety of reasons that would make the number fluctuate.
So July had the lowest water loss, about 20%. So perhaps that was a month where none of these extra things happened, do you think?
Correct. Yeah, we didn't have mini leaks.
And is there anything else that's a regular thing where water doesn't get counted? For example, does the Ryan Center pay for water?
We do.
So,
The pool pays for water. Or we track.
so it's either going to be water break, valves, or
Hydrants,
leaky hydrants or leaky pipe.
leaky pipes. Majority has been leaky pipes. A lot of the reductions you've seen are leaky pipes that we had in the village that we didn't have data to identify them.
Also, what about meters that might not be accurate?
We have reviewed some meters. You know, we have a grant application before OPWC for $1 million to replace our water meters. There have been meters that we have tested that have tested slow, meaning that they are under reading the amount of water that's putting through the meter. So that we anticipate that with the replacement of all the water meters, and this is something that we've talked about in the past, that we would get a more accurate water consumption at the home and throughout town. So the water meters, and some of the meters that we tested, they tested slow, so we expect that we're losing some water through the old water meters. To what extent we're losing them, we don't know. We have slowly, every meter that we're replacing, we've randomly test them to see how they're performing so that we can get a better understanding of how much water we're losing through there. We have some properties that, particularly one property that has a longstanding agreement that they're getting water for free. We put in a water meter there to track that. Yes, there are still some.
I couldn't keep a straight face.
There are things that we've talked about, how do we remediate that, and there's been some challenges. Amy, that's a curveball for you right now, but in the past with the previous solicitor, we talked about how to remediate that, and the options we had at our disposal then was to meter it and send either a debt cancellation or some other agreement, or revisit the agreement that allow for these connections to be in place. So I'll get with Amy Blankenship about these, but those are other ways that we know we're losing water. There are others that we've resolved. For example, we provide water to the community development of the community housing cooperative. I'm blanking out on the VIII. We put in a meter and there's an updated water line, so we're able to track the water better at that site, something that we couldn't in the past. So now we're tracking that water.
Great, thank you.
Kevin?
I want to ask a question, but I haven't got it formulated in my head. But a few days ago, a resident in the Vale just asked about, has there ever been any consideration about the village annexing the Vale and what that would look like, maybe from some perspective? I mean, is this like a done deal, or is it something that a conversation could be had about if some of the services that the residents out there might be looking for could be afforded to them?
I have not had conversations about annexing the Vale. I don't know why we haven't talked about it. I don't think there hasn't been a business need come up for it, but certainly it would be close enough that they could be, that they
It
could
would
be annexed.
create some headaches. I was surprised that they would be interested.
Yeah,
It was one person.
In the past,
We got to
they
convince
were-
24 more people.
we could do it, but my understanding is that they have not been interested. And so that's always kind of the,
Well, I mean, the properties and how there's a lot of stuff
Right,
that's
right.
would be non-conforming.
Well, like I said, just in conversation, I was intrigued, and then they came up
Yeah,
tonight, so that's why.
it's an interesting one.
Yeah. Okay.
all right. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Josue. So we don't have old business, so we're going to move into a pre-discussion of 2023 goals. And did we get Gavin on? Which is okay. But so I, by the way, made sure to put 2023 in all the right places, so, so no confusion there. But you know, I thought a lot about, and you know, too bad Gavin's not here, but we'll have our retreat to talk about this. I've liked, you know, his kind of like list around like growth and infrastructure and whatnot. I had trouble moving away from the kind of aspirational statements, so those are still there. But part of what I did when I looked at this was I thought about his list and other things that council members have talked about. I started to underline a few things that I thought were maybe like more actionable in the short term. And so, you know, I can maybe just like highlight, I also collapsed the categories a bit, but I guess one thing I am interested in is if there's anything major that's missing. So, you know, so basically, if you look at the priorities, the first one, facilitate the development of affordable and market rate housing. We've got a lot of action items here. I really do want to start to think about, especially since we put some money into the Affordable Housing Fund, what we're going to start to do with that. And part of the reason I underlined identify and implement strategic zoning improvements is this is something that council asked Planning Commission to do several months ago, and I haven't heard any action on that. So I think we need to follow up on that, and I think it is a game changer. And then I also underlined in the other category, the mock-ups, which actually I know Josue has already like considered. And we've talked about, you know, that we could use the Economic Sustainability Fund for that as well. But anyway, I expect there to be a lot of action here. As always, the responsible and resources sections are the ones that we don't usually fill out actively, and we don't really like put together our action plans. So I hope that's one of the things that we think about for our retreat on the 26th. So then we've got affordability. Again, I sort of regrouped a few things here. Environmental sustainability, and you know, this is where, you know, I underline the CASP initiatives, because I think that's, you know, really been developed, and you know, we're ready to look at that. And also I want to figure out what we're going to do about the solar stuff. So
Me too.
yeah, so I mean, we either need to like decide on a plan or whatever, but so that's why I underlined those. Structurally balanced budget. Yeah, there's a lot of things here that, you know, I'm into paid parking. I've gotten a impression that maybe others think that that's a good revenue source. Our reciprocal tax thing, we're going to be talking about starting on the 11th more actively and moving forward. Utility rates, and then we decided I think we all agreed we want to have a rec policy. So sustainable growth, lots of opportunities here that we need to talk more about. Social justice, I think in particular, since maybe we've pulled back on like the significant investment in the CRB, I still want to make sure that we're thinking about, whether it's that mediation approach or whatever, but I don't want to leave that off the table by any means. Mm-hmm. And then I left the active transportation piece on there. The gap here is I did take away the references to a green belt. And so I guess that's, something that we can talk about tonight or later. But I think we've recognized for a couple years now that tension between the green belt and affordability. And then I think folks have heard me say that I want to pull back that green space fund and use that money elsewhere. But anyway, so those were my, what I've absorbed. I think I captured what Gavin's talked about, tried to capture what I've heard from other folks. Mm-hmm. And, we could spend another 10 minutes or so talking about other things with the idea that we're going to dig in deep on this at our retreat. Marianne?
Yeah, two things. So I have been working on a draft of climate action sustainability goals for the village government. And I've reviewed that with Brian and Rebecca Potter, EC. We're meeting with Josue this week. Then the Environmental Commission will look at it. And then it should be ready for having all those eyes on it at our retreat, our workshop. And what I've tried to do there is actually just look at what we are doing for the most part, but that it hasn't been written down as a goal. For example, achieve 100% renewable energy for our electricity. And I've tried to make it as simple as possible. And so that's one thing. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the green belt. The green belt does not include any property within the village, what's that thing? Boundary? No, not boundary.
Urban service.
Urban service boundary. The green belt does not include any land within the urban service boundary. There is land within the urban service boundary for Yellow Springs to grow. I think it's not accurate to equate the green belt with Yellow Springs not growing. I think the not growing part of Yellow Springs has been an attitude that people in Yellow Springs have had for a long time, and resistance both to housing, we've seen that recently, as well as economic development. That's been a village resistance. I mean, I think that that's eroding. I think there's more support for it, but I don't think it's fair to equate the fact that there's a green belt with the fact that Yellow Springs cannot have more housing, have more business opportunities. At the point where we would get past the urban service boundary, that would mean that if we were to annex that property, we would have to, it couldn't be fed by the gravity sewer. And that's an issue that, well, we don't have to face that now, but I just think that that's important. And I am not disagreeing with what you were saying about the funds. I just think that it's important to clarify.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Carmen, Kevin?
Yes, Carmen, you're next. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was in the middle of writing a note, but it was about the green space. But I guess, Brian, when you said that we could talk about it, probably, if it wouldn't take too long, it might be a short conversation to talk about the establishment of that green space fund and any restrictions that exist that would make it a hindrance to us taking advantage of those funds. And like I said, I was writing a note and there was something else that Mary Ann said, but let's chalk it up to a senior moment. And if you could just.
Yeah,
give a
so
little
on
bit
the
of
Green
history.
Space Fund, so we've explored this in the past, and it was initially funded with some, what's the, Farm Bureau funds. But we expended all those funds, and so we got confirmation, actually, from our prior solicitor, from Chris, that, that those are funds that are flexible at this point.
Mhm.
So we've spent the obligation that we needed to. And in fact, if you track, and since Mary Ann and I have been on council, we regularly put money into that fund from the general fund. So,
Really?
yeah.
The source of,
Because
Quite a
we-
while.
the funds that are there now are, the source of those funds are general revenue funds.
Right.
Those have been transferred, so those funds could go back to its source. We gotta get permission from the tax commissioner to move those funds, but those funds, the source of them are general fund revenues.
Also, we had an agreement with the Council Land Trust for a certain period of time.
Right, which
And
is expiring, yeah, so.
But that, when does it expire, do you know?
The agreement that Patty Bates signed expires in 2022, or expired in
End of
2022.
2022?
Yeah, so there was a 5-year commitment, $40,000 a year, plus 5 for technical support, and that expired in 2022.
But yeah, for a certain amount of time, we did put money from the general fund into those funds. So, but as Josue said, to pull them back into the general fund, we do need to get the court to agree, so.
And if we're doing that, the old wheels clicked in. And it might be a non-issue at this point, but right at the end of our last meeting last year, there was some 22 acres being, I may have made that number up, but some acres that someone wanted to dispose of. Is that still a possibility?
I spoke with the potential donor or the person who's interested in donating it, and that's something that they'll put on the radar, and we'll revisit when the time is right. At the time, we couldn't bring it to council without the proper legislation, which was an ordinance, 2 hearings, and that didn't fit their timeline of when they needed action. So we'll revisit that conversation. That property, those 22 acres, that it would be green space essentially, because there's a conservation easement that will restrict us from doing anything on the property.
Right. Yeah.
And it would also include a tax burden for the village. So, I mean, we'd have to have a discussion about it, I think. So, which, yeah, we really didn't have
Correct.
time to do.
You do have an upcoming presentation from TLT at your next meeting, so it's a good time to ask questions about what's coming onto the radar and
Yep.
those kinds of things.
That's a good point. So TLT is updating us on the grant that we were able to secure with that green space fund. So,
Okay.
yeah, which was great. Carmen?
Haven't answered my question, well, haven't asked.
Well, good.
Okay.
Teamwork. Yeah, right.
So I guess, I'm happy to reformat, how we look at goals. But like I said, it was hard for me to totally separate from, the structure that we've used. I think there's a lot of good detail here, but responsibilities, I think, are key. And, I also think, Mary Ann, when you talked about wouldn't it be cool to just be able to click on the CASP thing and then you go to the document where those goals are, or that action plan is. I mean, that's the way we could reformat this document, so that the things we're really prioritizing that people are working on, they can develop those plans, and then we've got that access. So that's what I want to see happen. Okay. All right. So I think we'll have a fun retreat. I have no doubt. All right.
And Gavin is on.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
Say, Gavin, did you want to add anything?
It's very small.
No, sorry, everybody. COVID catches up with families and it has impact. So yeah, I just caught the last half of that part of the conversation, and I think I see where we're on the agenda.
All right, cool. So are you staying on? Do you want to talk about the Public Safety Committee or?
Yeah, no, I'll be on for the rest of the meeting. The short version on this is I need some more time. I apologize. I thought that I would have more time before this meeting, and that time got sucked up with family caregiving obligations. And so the short version is that it's still where it was the last time, which is that I think we need to figure out committee work and look forward to talking about it, but I'm just not ready right now.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good segue into the next topic because I don't know, I made a short list of the committees I think we should prioritize, and I think public safety is one. So, Mary Ann, should I turn it over to you?
Okay. So at the beginning of 2020, former council woman Laura Curlis had proposed that we change our structure from using commissions, which are really citizen-led with council liaisons, to committees in which 2 council people would be on a committee that would be focused on different aspects of village government services. And at that point in 2020, there was a task force created. Some of the people in this room were on that task force. And there wasn't a resolution of how to move forward because there was some disagreement. I included documents that came out of that effort, which lasted, I guess, about half a year. So this time, when we were talking about council effectiveness, I thought it made sense to throw a wider net and include that work that was done as part of that net, but also look at what are some other things that might impact how council is effective. And so I made a list of things. Kevin looked at it, he added some things. And so what you see in the December 30th memo to council is the type of issues that we might discuss or not. I had hoped that we could send out a survey, so get the results back so that I could at this meeting say, well, everyone thinks this should be discussed and this shouldn't, but I was informed that that may not agree with the Sunshine Law, which actually is one of the things that I have listed there in terms of its impact on how we can be effective. So I think that part of the reason Laura made the suggestion about committees was the fact that with the manager-council form of government, the idea is that council creates policy and the village manager leads the staff in enacting the policy. However, in part because of Sunshine Law, in my opinion, in part because of the impact of Sunshine Law, in part because there aren't ways for council to have deliberative discussions because we have so much coming at us at the council table. I don't think that model is as effective as it might be. I don't think it gives the I don't think it gives council the kind of time that it needs to really think deeply about policy. And I don't think it gives the village manager that sort of clarity about where council is. Council's 5 people and we don't all think alike. And it's difficult for us, I think, to get to a place where we can say, okay, this is what we agree on. So this is what Kevin and I have come up with. Now, how we move forward on any of this is up in the air. A suggestion, Amy suggested this, that we take up this as one of the topics at our retreat and that would give us time to look at this list. Maybe there are things that could drop off or things that could add on. And then we would need to decide how would we really create time to talk about whatever it is that we decide to talk about. Would we have a special work session, or would we have a task force, or whatever? So that's where it is right now. And I don't,
Yeah, and I will add that if you see or go through the items that Marianne put in the packet, because she was part of that committee that did the work back in 2000 or 2020.
no, I
rather.
wasn't on the committee, actually.
Oh, all right. I thought there was a memo from you.
Yeah,
So
well, I suggested a committee be started, and I managed to not be on it. I suggested who should be on it.
well, you showed great leadership. We appreciate that. But the memo that Marianne put in the packet from January 13th, I think is quite insightful, which I think offers a good summary of, excuse me, maybe the tenor of the meetings that were happening back then. So I just want to highlight that. And again, thank Marianne for leadership in that regard. And yes, as she and I discussed, we imagine that, the retreat would be the first place that we could look at this, as a group. And certainly I would submit that there's more things perhaps that we have missed, or, things can be combined so it doesn't look as daunting as it is. But certainly we welcome comments and suggestions. And I think I'd look forward to, if it can fit on the retreat agenda, I think it'll be quite appropriate for us to dig in more deeply then. And especially the fact that we, as Marianne said, casting a broader net, that umbrella, that net being council effectiveness, boards and commissions, blah, 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 meetings, all that is under there. So I think it's good for us to have that broader look, and we it's a bigger deal. It's probably not going to anywhere get resolved in one retreat when we consider all of the things that we're looking at. But we are have come to the conclusion that the initial thought being the committee on committees is just a small part of council effectiveness, and we just want to take a broader look. And I think that's another place where input would be welcome, not just digging deep on the items that we've listed, but considering broader than what we've even considered, the things that could be employed with the ultimate goal of making us as effective as possible. And so however you define effectiveness, whether that's us getting out of here at 8:30 every first and third Mondays, or whatever, however that looks, I think putting that under that umbrella, and I think as a group, in a workshop type setting, we can decide how to best move forward.
Yeah, I think this is very tackleable, if I said that right, tackleable. And in my mind, I kind of imagine, we've set aside 4 hours for retreat 1. I think 2 hours on goals, and honestly, 2 hours on this probably makes sense. And maybe there's something else we need to do, but anyway. But that being said, I have a couple things that come to mind. One of those being that I think a way that we could maybe achieve Mary Ann's goal is to create a worksheet and some homework for that retreat. So again, I think we could do that, right? So again, we have our own worksheets that, we do some of this homework coming into the meeting. And I think you guys raised a lot of topics. I'll just put out, since I made a list, that I guess first of all, I noticed the thing about, the council president role, and I didn't really understand Laura's thinking back then, but upon reviewing everything, I'm thinking about it differently. I don't think the council president would be assigning those roles. I think council would be assigning those roles. So I do want to just kind of pull back on some of the things that I would want to be different so that, we spread the wealth or whatever. But I did like think about the committees that I think we need, which are economic sustainability, utilities. I think we could collapse all those. And I do want to emphasize with utilities, like, to me, it's more of a tracking of like that we're meeting the goals, not like us intervening on the, so that was actually kind of my main thing, is that I think a lot of these committees could be about tracking the work, not about interfering, with the administration. We've got finance, public safety, we've flagged, park, streets, facilities, and housing. And then I think, CASP is like handled in a different area or whatever, with EC. But so anyway, when I looked at it, I saw like 6 committees that I thought, especially like tracking like what we're trying to do, with whatever action plans, goals we have, makes a whole lot of sense. And then I guess the other thing that I remember pushing back on without being really involved was the fact that these were more like kind of council administration led as opposed to citizen led. But I've come to realize that I think these committees are about us having like, separate time to process things, bring them back to council. And so, because I remember hearing that was one of the pushbacks, is whether, citizens should, have voting roles. So I think citizens can definitely inform the work, but I do think this is about vetting projects by council and bringing them back to the full body. So, anyway, which is why I think they're different from commissions, which again, why, we have a PACC and an EC role and all that. But those are some of the things that I've reflected upon that have changed. My thinking has changed on it. So what were you thinking, Carmen?
I'm just thinking about whether, like, my question and the questions I'm going to be asking myself is kind of weighing the pros and cons of both of these kind of systems, or these structures. But I guess my question is, where does efficacy lie? Does it lie in the structure, or does it lie in the ability to cohesively, work together? So whether it's a committee or a commission, it lies, I think the efficacy lies in being able to work. So I'm going to think about whether or not, I'll be thinking about that.
Yep.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because we're looking for higher efficacy, effectiveness, but do we know what that looks like? I mean, we're presuming we do. And so, but I think it certainly, there's an opportunity for us to have a meeting of the minds on what we should be and how we should do the things that we do.
Right. Well, and that's why I think it's got to be blended, right? Which is, again, like Public Arts Commission, the structure we have now makes sense. Environmental Commission makes sense. But, if we are like setting housing goals, then I think having, a targeted, like active council administration kind of activity, like makes sense. And so I think that's where, I think we've got room for both. And I think that's where we, yes.
Yeah. Hybrid.
Yes.
Oh, pollinization.
See, but anyway, so I've come around to like, I think there are a lot of good elements here. And I think we can collapse it. And I think it will move us towards efficiency, but I guess that's why. So Judy, you kind of paused. Did you feel like we had other things at the retreat that we needed to do besides goals in this?
No, I was just thinking that when this mandate first came out of review the committees, do that thing. My understanding was that it was going to be a group of people sitting down at a table and putting their ideas together and understanding what it meant, how it might best move forward, and then presenting those ideas to council. And it turned into a couple of council people interviewing some folks and then deciding what council was going to hear about. And I think the more we do it that way, the less efficient we will be, because you cannot create efficiency when you presume that you need to be the driver at all times. And when the mandate is sit down and talk to everyone and come up with ideas and do a thing, and it's assumed that the only people who can do that properly are council members, you're going to lose efficiency. And if you want to do it that way, you will create more work for yourselves and things will get done. Sometimes there will be resentment, sometimes there will not. Sometimes things will get done better than they would have, and sometimes they won't. But I just think we have this opportunity to be very inclusive, and that will create efficiencies.
And so that's why I guess I'd like to think about that tracking piece. And then, yeah, I think I'd like to hear more about what you're thinking about as well, about adding that capacity. So maybe you and Mary Ann could work on the worksheet? Would that, I mean, because, I mean, I think you have the like ideas that you had in mind that would be good for us to think about in terms of a survey. But I guess I'd also like maybe a different perspective on it as well. Like,
well, I think
so,
if we're looking at very different work style for staff. It's not as different for council. It's different for staff. So I don't think that you're going to get I don't think it works as well unless you bring those key staff folk in and sit around a table and go, here's what we want to do. We want to do things in this sort of a way, and we would need some of you guys on all of these committees. That might sound like a lot of work. How do we make that work? How do we make it happen best? And I don't have those answers. I don't have all those answers. I mean, I think you just need people at the table.
So Judy and I did meet, and that was very good conversation. I mean, I took notes and I appreciated that. So Judy, I'm not clear, when you're talking about involving staff, are you talking specifically about the committee, potential committee structure, or are you talking about the other things that I listed, like council, how council meetings are, and all these 8 or 9 things?
Well, I thought initially we'd go back through the different segments, like these are the committees that are being proposed, and look at them, you know, kind of around that table. And so, for example, initially there was a lot of resistance about a utilities kind of committee. Brian addressed that by saying, and I don't think it would be like this, it would be more for this purpose. So if we were at the table with Johnny and one of his guys and Josue and the group, and you made that same statement, then Johnny might say, all right, well, in that case, here's when I have certain kinds of information, here's when it would be most beneficial to meet, here's when I set my goals, here's when it's stuff we don't know. And we don't know that until we sit down at the table with folks. So that's, I mean, I sort of feel like it might need to back up in some areas, and in some areas it can sort of move forward quickly, like Finance Committee, got all the moving parts are there, it can pretty readily skip ahead.
well, and this worksheet concept could be very general. It could be like, all right, here's like an idea for a committee. What are the pros? What are the cons, or whatever?
Mhm.
And, you know, I'd love to get, I mean, we should have everyone's feedback, you know, so, okay, well, I'll be involved in that as well. But, you know, I like the idea of trying to survey. I think you would bring some good elements from like the staff side. And then I think, you know, ultimately, like I just like us to have like a more focused conversation. And I think we had some kind of document where we, you know, had done some pre-work that would make the conversation more meaningful. So.
Yeah.
And Josue, I'm sure you have lots of thoughts on it as well. I mean, you know, so.
I do, and I try to stay optimistic about what is the ideal form for us to get the operational side of things done, while also positioning ourselves for the strategic successes that we need. It hasn't always, the relationship hasn't worked well with council and staff and then me and my team, because we're approaching issues from different lenses. We have different perspective. I want to go back to this point where Carmen said, what is looking for efficacy and efficiency and productivity? That was a point of constraint in all the conversations that we've had. Because from my perspective, as things are being proposed, and I'm glad that you made some of the commentary you made, it didn't seem to us that there was much efficacy to be gained, because the approach from the onset was, and I think Mary Ann's memo points at it, that there were elements of power and control at the center of the initial proposal. And so the first round of conversations, we couldn't get beyond the framework, because a lot of it centered around power and control, even to the point like, do citizens get to weigh in on matters? Well, we had a vote of 4-1, because everyone except one person wanted citizen involvement in some form. The architect of the committee structure proposed that even staff didn't have a vote or say in actions, that this committee, essentially 2 council members, would dictate what would happen. And so I moving beyond that, I think Judy makes an excellent point that there are council conversation and council wanting to get deeper into a matter, how the staff fit into that and how does our work fit into that. We need to find where does it fit, and is it efficient for council and staff? I think there are some things that it would help me to have a better understanding where council is on a lot of things, because there's times where I feel that I am delivering for council and I wake up excited and I think I'm delivering exactly what council wants, and I get here and it's far from it. Right, and so I think that we do need those opportunities where we get to learn where council visions are in a lot of things, so that we have better alignment and synergy. 2022, I think it's a good example of where we have been out of alignment in things as simple as Ellis Pond. We felt we were doing God's work by getting Bartley Bell and buying fountains and doing this stuff, and it didn't turn out to be the solution that we envisioned. So I think there's a lot more conversations we need to have. I don't think that we need to focus on one particular framework that's going to solve for all the committees or all the work. I think that we have to be open to finding a structure that works by theme or topic. I think what we figured out in Finance Committee has worked well, addressing immediate needs, like, right, hey, interest rates are going up, let's move money over to Star Ohio. That was a no-brainer. We could work on something tangible. There was no emotion other than exciting stuff about it. ATP has had several successes. So there's some work, though, collaboration that have had successes, others haven't. And so we don't have to envision one framework for everything that we want to do. This hybridization piece from an organizational development can be advantageous to us to think about, what is it that we're trying to solve? What's the problem that we're looking to solve? And what are the best tools at our disposal? Because we have plenty of them. What are the best tools that we could use to solve the challenges that we're looking to?
Well, to me, it's about the opportunity to do transformative work. And so the theme for me is about, how do we focus on meaningful discussions that accomplish those goals around housing, infrastructure, and so forth. And so I like the idea of the worksheet. I think we should come into this session having done some homework.
And fresh.
Yes,
Fresh.
exactly. Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
new
open,
year.
exactly. But I totally agree. Like, I mean, we don't have to be locked into like one way to do like each of these things. So I think, but I liked what you said about like, it should be sort of around these different like topics that are relevant to the work. And so ultimately, like, hopefully that helps us come together, as council and staff. So, yeah, Mary Ann?
Yeah, so I need more clarity. What this memo, December 30th, includes 9 things. The first one is in regard to committees and commissions. I think that's what the discussion has just now been around. I think that's what Judy was discussing, I think, and I think Josue. Some of the other things are more directly related to council, like role of council president, understanding the sunshine law more thoroughly so we can really mitigate what I think are the negative effects of it. So when you talk about the survey, or whatever it is, are you talking about taking this document sort of and creating it into something for council members to reflect on ahead of time and come to the retreat with something written, or I don't.
Yeah, I imagine us kind of making a spreadsheet where we can all make some notes about maybe not all of those topics, but at least, prioritize, so.
Okay, well, so how about if Kevin and I, who have been, and we can work with Judy and do that?
Yep.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, sounds good.
So
Yes.
sorry, I know this is weird, but could I just ask one quick, just structural question about the committee ideas? So I'm sorry if I missed it in here, but I don't know if it was like assumed. So when we talk about the idea of a committee structure, are we talking about the idea that because there seemed to be a lot of focus around this question of voting, is the idea that, like, I'm thinking about, for instance, the way that things work at the state legislature, where there's a committee that something has to be voted out of before it can go to the full floor. Just maybe it's because of the way things have functioned with the commissions, but the idea that there would need to be something that gets voted out of committee to then get consideration at the full council seems like the only reason why the voting power would sort of make a notable difference. But I guess that would seem like a significant departure to have, for instance, citizens that are not elected be part of that decision-making process. So can I just want to get a clarification? Is that the sort of inherent expectation of a committee structure?
Yeah.
So I think that as it was initially proposed, yes, that was exactly the intent. The intent was anything that's going to get before council as a piece of legislation or as a policy issue is going to get voted up or down in that committee, and it doesn't come to council if it doesn't get voted up. And so there was a lot of discussion around who got to vote and all those sorts of things. My understanding is that's not the way this group is looking at that. It's more, how do you create an efficiency by getting it into a subcommittee that can discuss, vet, gather information, get a best practice in place, and then bring it before council, so that council doesn't have to do that at the table necessarily.
Okay.
I mean,
That what you just said there is in keeping with what makes more sense to me based on our dialogue. The idea of it being sort of a strict, the committee, that then someone, I would assume that then a council person would have to introduce everything that the committee would consider, because otherwise, like, wouldn't the people who would introduce legislation have to be, people that have been voted on by? Anyway, so that makes sense. As long as we're all on the same page, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't talking about completely different things in terms of the range of what the hybrid options are. And I'm all for the idea that, like, there might be different structures that make sense for different, working groups or something, and that the main purpose should be how do we spend our time on meaningful topics. But I just wanted to make sure that I hadn't missed something entirely. So thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate you clarifying that, Judy. That's the way I think about it as well. I think the idea is that, even with this Committee on Committees report, it never came to council. And I remember saying, like, hello, we asked for this. Mm-hmm. So to me, a lot of this activity is directed by our goals and council and, and working with our administration. So, yeah.
Well, and it goes a ways towards addressing one issue, which is that when council's discussing something at council table, staff have a limited ability to influence that discussion. there may be a memo, but it's not really acceptable for a staff person to jump up and say, oh, God, no, don't do that. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there are limited opportunities for that input, whereas in the committee, at least when we were discussing this topic, everyone at that table had an equal voice, was listened to, was included in the information that was presented. It created a more equitable presentation that went to council, I thought. So anyway, I mean, I like it for that reason.
And I would submit that staff is free to stand up and say, oh, God, don't do that. I think that's helpful when it happens. I'm not,
Right, but sometimes it's hard to have those full conversations, here.
Indeed.
And, so it's nice to, have like walk through them and then like bring up the high points. So, all right, well, I love this. And so it sounds like we've got our agenda for the retreat, right?
Do we have our agenda for the retreat? So we're doing
2 hours on goals and 2 hours on.
Who are we?
Yes.
What do we do?
How do we operate?
Why are we here?
Our MO.
How we work together,
Yes.
Yep.
how
Okay.
we work to pursue the goals, really.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah, I mean, they're totally tied together. So, okay. So I think, wow, are we going to get out of here before
Don't
9?
question it. Don't question.
All right, so we've got some great recommendations for the Public Arts and Culture Commission, and I thought I don't know, we could maybe tag team it. So maybe if you want to do Michael and I'll do Ina and then you do Amy, and so I realized, and Gavin, this is for you as well. When you guys had those Public Arts and Culture Commission, nominees, neither of you had ever really gone through the process. And so I jumped in, Gavin, sorry. But yeah, I want to make sure that, and Judy and I talked about, just making sure that kind of like step by step or whatever, because we've got some great documents for folks. But anyway, so we did the process, we did the interviews. And so do you want to talk about why Michael's a great fit?
Well, Michael Caselli is the director at Herndon Gallery. He is a 1987 grad of Antioch College, I do believe. He's been in the periphery for a long time. He has a master's in fine arts and sculpture that he got from someplace on the East Coast.
Yep, Rhode Island.
Here you go, Rhode Island. So, and is an accomplished artist in his own right, and just really an exemplary human being who has some great ideas for PACC. Also, stuff that's going on at Herndon Gallery. He's really stepping it up over there, and really happy to have him on board.
Great. All right.
Nominate him.
All right. And I'll second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah. Great to have that connection with Antioch College. So yeah, I did not realize like right away when you had like emailed me about or texted me about Ina Neron, that I had a really great conversation with her a couple months ago. She works with the Yellow Springs Community Foundation, another great connection for us, has a great arts background. I know you guys had a great conversation. We had a great conversation as well. Yeah, highly recommend her. And so I'll make a motion to have Ina on the Public Arts and Culture Commission.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. And then we realized Amy is, yeah.
So Amy Walmsley is the force behind the PACC. She needs to also be nominated again for her position on PACC.
Yeah, because what is it, 3 years? Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah.
Any limit on terms?
Nope.
And it expired in November. So we need to nominate her
Nice.
again as well.
Right. And everybody knows Amy. So, yeah.
So I'll second if that was a nomination. I'll second.
Okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, excellent. Okay, so future agenda items. We definitely got a lot going on this month.
Just a quick question. Josue, have you heard back about the personnel policy manual, anti-discrimination language?
I have not heard back from the judge, and I will email them to
Bump it?
confirm that or see where we are with that. So we do have that personnel manual language update. We're working through a few contracts that we need to bring before council. We were awarded the body worn camera grant that we applied for, that the council authorized. We were awarded essentially just the equipment costs, and the way the governor's doing the grant program is that we have to reapply every year. So there's a bit of risk for us because we're not guaranteed the money for the 5-year program. We've been granted for 1 year, and we have to reapply every year. And there's no guarantee that we will get the funding every year. So
I want to be clear, what needs to be renewed? In other words, if we have the equipment and we don't renew, they come take the equipment? Or is it software?
That's what licenses and cloud storage.
Right,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
So we could essentially make a decision if we didn't think we could afford it and we didn't get the renewal.
Yes and no. The governor is expected to sign legislation that needs a second vote and state legislator making it mandatory for body worn cameras being mandatory in 2024. So the governor's intent and state legislator is to make body worn cameras mandatory for all law enforcement agencies. So
And then are they thinking that they would 100% fund that mandate?
I don't know what they're thinking, but I doubt that they're thinking of fully funding their state mandates.
Right.
Yeah, so we're in a very difficult position that we have contracts that have been submitted to us based on us getting this grant. We got a grant that only covers the first year. I think it's something that we need to move forward and make her case at the next grant application. And, if the governor and the state legislator don't provide funding for these ongoing programs, is yet another unfunded state mandate, which is not uncommon for the state legislator to do.
So you're saying these contracts would extend beyond a year?
Well, we would have to, the way the pricing structure works is that you're spreading out the cost over a 5-year period, so you're not paying as much every year. That's the risk that we would have to take on a 5-year contract that we do not have grant funding guaranteed over that 5-year period.
Is there a dollar figure that we know is solid for an annual, for what those annual costs would be?
Yes, for the cameras is around $48,000 for the 5-year period. So it's about almost $10,000 per year for 5 years. And then there's we've got we need to upgrade our in-dash camera equipment, which is something we presented on capital improvements. That would also be something that we would stretch out on a 5-year period so that we can capture warranty and replacement support over a 5-year period versus us buying it in 1 year and having to spend money on maintaining them. And
So you're saying we've gotten a grant for 10,000?
we got the grant for $14,000 for the body worn camera. So
And no match, just,
right, well, the grant will cover
14,000.
yes, that's correct. So it'll cover the first year contract, and we're on the hook for the 4 years unless we get funding in subsequent years from the state.
so you're saying we're on the hook for another 36-ish thousand or?
Yeah.
So what is the resolution?
Well, in terms of agenda planning, is accepting the contracts for the body worn cameras. So that's one item I need. We may have another contract for the water line replacement, but I'll get with Judy on that one if we're in a position to execute that contract. There's a resolution I want to bring to council. This will be a third item on, I think in the past we supported private properties connecting off the bike path because bike paths are public access and we want people to enjoy them and have connectivity. We have a request for a property owner that abuts the future bike path, the Mary's Way, connecting the village out to Agraria And the individuals are not looking to build something right now, but they want the right to be able to connect to that bike path. I think it's good public policy to allow connectivity to the bike paths. So I would think it would be good for council to adopt policy that would allow abutting property owners to connect to the bike paths at their cost. So,
Why can't they just do it if it's on their property?
well, they can build up to their property without any permission.
But
from
we
us.
own the,
Oh, but
Whatever the distance between the
Oh.
bike path and the property line is, that's where we would need council's explicit authorization to allow that connection.
and my experience has been that it's usually one of those things that is not, it's just kind of like if you bike out to Xenia, people that have like built those little like things, they didn't get permission to do that. They just did it. So, yeah.
So we'd like to bring a resolution to council that is explicit that this is a active transportation policy that we want to adopt and encourage private property owners to connect at their cost to bike paths and meet village standards while doing it. I think Brian's pointing to property owners that just built their paths and they might meet standards or not at all.
why would they need to? Because they're probably going to have signs saying private property. I mean, the only people going up and down that thing would be them.
Well, if I had a bike path behind my house, I would have a gate and I'd have a walkway and I would want to connect directly without having to, swim across stream.
Right. What we would probably care about is that the material, the substrate, it matches what's existing in the bike path. So if we have a paved bike path, we would probably want what meets up to the bike path be paved as well. Then what's on their property could be whatever they want it to be, if it's gravel or pave or whatnot. That way we don't have any gravel flowing into a paved surface. That makes sense?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that could be an issue. I think also there can be liability issues, which, we can talk about offline, but there are a lot of states that like waive any kind of, like liability on property owners if somebody uses like a path like that, and others that don't. So I mean, I think there are a couple legitimate issues that would be good to resolve. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, we're looking forward to the 11th. And it should be a good discussion. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
See? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. People say that like you're, in the new year, you're trying to like set the habits that you, so here we go.
Yep. I love it. So